Enochian is a very enigmatic and potent magical system that has been a constant theme in this channel for a few months now. Now, one of the main components of the Enochian system is the Enochian watchtowers, and where essentially these grids of different letters, assortments of letters, are basically invoked and casted magic over to essentially open up angelic portals. However, before there was the watchtowers of the Enochian system, there was a grimoire that the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn and Crowley didn't have very much knowledge of, or at least couldn't get and couldn't retain the information of it in time. This grimoire in question is the Heptarchia Mystica, or the Mysticism of the Sevenfold Dominion, in where John Dee gives Enochian planetary magic. Yes, planetary magic is a huge thing amongst different mystical traditions, with the more hermetic Eastern root having the Picatrix of the Guide al Hakim, with the Christians having more of the Arbitel, and the Jewish faith having a little bit of the Sefer Raziel or the Sefer Razim. So, planetary magic is a huge part of mysticism and practice of occultism and spirituality, and today we're going to be covering the planetary aspects or the planetary presence within the Enochian system via the Heptarchia Mystica. So yeah, without further ado, the Equanastahab, or the Brethren of Gold, is proud to present the Forgotten Enochian Grimoire, a review of the Heptarchia Mystica and a play-by-play by each chapter on what each chapter basically is summarized up to describe and what it is it's showing. Without further ado, folks, let's get started on talking about the Forgotten Enochian Grimoire, the Heptarchia Mystica. The Heptarchia Mystica, as per the Sevenfold Dominion title, has 7 chapters in it in total. In this 4 subsection video, we will cover the 4 different topics: 1. Chapters 1 to 3, 2. Chapters 5 to 6, 3. Chapters 4 and 7, and 4. The outro. So let's get started with the first section of the video, chapters 1 to 3. What is the meaning behind these messages in chapters 1 to 3? What is the first 3 chapters of the Heptarchia Mystica about? In the first 3 chapters, you guys might be familiar with the 4 main archangels: Gabriel, Michael, Raphael, and Uriel. These 3 out of 4, Gabriel being excluded for some reason, is the main component and the main conversationalist that John Dee speaks to in the constraints of the Heptarchia. There are other angels that John Dee speaks to as well, the planetary kings and princes of the days of the week. For example, King Karmara, who rules over Monday, and King Bobagel, who rules over Sunday. These are angels that have never been introduced before in John Dee's system, and serve as a very unique structure and a unique voice to the Heptarchia Mystica. The common message between all the different angels that John Dee is speaking to in the 3 chapters is that there is a mystery in the Sevenfold Dominion of the planets, and that constructing these talismans, the laments, and the sigils instructed could give John Dee immense power and immense authority over the forces that be. This is where I think Gabriel might have a present factor in the Heptarchia, because one of the main benefits that Michael claims that John Dee will get if he constructs the Benorum angels, or the angels of good, is that he will unlock, quote-unquote, the strength of God. If anyone knows Hebrew linguistics, you will know that Gabriel means God is my strength. So I've come to a peculiar conclusion that Gabriel is the underlying force that basically permeates the heptarchial force and the heptarchial power. So when one is tapping into the heptarchial energy, they're unlocking 3 out of the 4 archangels, with Gabriel actually being an underlying factor. Pretty cool, right? Now let's get into chapters 5 and 6 and then the juicy parts of the video, which is chapters 4 and 7. Shall we? In chapter 5 of the Heptarchia Mystica, it is a prayer that John Dee claims to be read by himself at least 3 times a day. The prayer is a consecration and a request for divine sanction. John Dee seeks to ensure that his angelic workings are rooted in God's will, empowered by grace, and used for praise of God rather than for profane and selfish ends. It's a moment where devotion, scholarship, and esotericism converge in a single litany of humility and ambition. John Dee in this prayer opens by addressing God as eternal, almighty, and creator of all things. It is full of classical Christian exaltations like King of Glory and Lord of Hosts. John Dee in this prayer emphasizes that for a long time he has sincerely sought true knowledge of God's laws and the properties of creation, not for selfish gain, but to glorify God. John Dee affirms that the goal is not only his own comfort and salvation, but also the comfort of other faithful servants and the vindication of God's promises and the public demonstration that these spirits are truly angels of light and not deceivers. John Dee notes in this prayer that the times are miserable and lamentable, suggesting an apocalyptic or crisis background, and that now at last he feels compelled to act upon what he believes can make a difference. The prayer ends with repeated pleas for God to grant all of this for thy only begotten Son, Jesus Christ's sake, and ends with a threefold Amen. In chapter 6 of the Heptarchia, it is a license to depart for heptarchial kings and princes. A license to depart is an important aspect of any spiritual practice. It makes sure you close the door of whatever spiritual entity you are opening yourself up to in the process of the ritual. A license to depart is basically you ending whatever conversing you're doing with the spirit and making sure they don't reside in your life afterwards. Unless somehow you want that and you want the spirit to stay in your life, then a license to depart is pretty much useless. But yeah, that's pretty much chapters 5 and 6 content. What is chapters 4 and 7? The reason you guys came to watch this video. So what makes chapter 4 and 7 very unique in the Heptarchia, and why I've bunched them together in one segment, is that they are both chapters that entail visual representations and pictures that are in the Heptarchia Mystica. So let's start with chapter 4 respectively. What pictures do we see in chapter 4? Well, in the chapter 4 of the Heptarchia, John Dee is confronted with each and every single planetary ruler's king and prince. From among the princes of the planetary rulers of the days of the week, we get these tables called the 42 ministers, and where we get 6 names that have 7 letters each and every single one of them. Now we learn sooner or later in the Heptarchia that the reason why there's 6 ministers for each and every single day of the week is they represent 4-hour intervals of a 24-hour cycle. So the ministers can be used as planetary hour markings for when you do your workings with the angels. That's pretty interesting, right? If you guys want, I can actually provide you guys pictures of the ministers of each and every single day. So without further ado, here they are. Above in the picture you will see the 42 ministers of Sunday. Next you will see the 42 ministers of Monday. Next you will see the 42 ministers of Tuesday. Next you will see the 42 ministers of Wednesday. Next you'll see the 42 ministers of Thursday. Next you'll see the 42 ministers of Friday. And finally, you will see the 42 ministers of Saturday. So this all concludes the important sigils that are within the chapter 4. But what about chapter 7? In chapter 7, John Dee enlists the descriptions of each and every single one of the planetary kings and princes, their functions, their roles, their powers, and their appearances. At the end of the Heptarchia is an angelic table called the Bonorum Angels, and where the Bonorum means good. So in the Bonorum Angel table, we get a table of angels whose names all start with B that permeate 49 or 7 by 7 mystical folds, and where we see once again a sevenfold dominion of each and every single one of the angels. Every single angel in the Bonorum Angels name starts with the letter B, which I've heard denotes the first word of the Torah, which is Bereshith, which means Genesis. And also every single Bonorum Angel has 7 letters, and there are 7 Bonorum Angels for each one of the 7 planets. So therefore, we have 49 Bonorum Angels, all starting with the letter B, that denotes Bereshith. Where does this table come from exactly? Where does the table of the 49 angels come from? Well, that's a very good question. The 49 Bonorum Angels comes from the Tabula Angelica Collecta, which is the collection of the angelic names. If you guys see the picture above, this is a random assortment of letters that are plastered all throughout a cross grid that Edward Kelly received. And through a means of decoding and through a means of circulating through the different grades of the letters of assortment, John Dee was able to find 49 angelic names within the constraints of this collective table. Isn't that amazing? But what if you guys are struggling to see the practicality or the daily usage of this heptarchial stuff? Well, no fear, cause your boy Ken is here. I am aiming, and this is the outro for the video, I am aiming to make a book called the Numerical Temple of Bonorum, and where I will explain how the Bonorum Angels are actually rooted in the Hebrew Bible scriptures, and the 42 angelic ministers of each day have something to do with Arabic sigils and Arabic magic. So if you guys would like to see that book, and where I produce a copy talking about how the Bonorum Angels and the ministers are relevant to systems we still use today, like the Arabic and Hebrew Bible magical systems, then be sure to leave a like, comment, and subscribe. And the Ikhwan Astahab is proud to have all of you here to learn, strive, survive, and prosper. Thank you guys so much for watching, and peace out. Thanks for being around and staying around.